I got drawn to the Eastern Shore 40 years ago. I guess harking back to when I was a kid, we used to drive through here on our way to Rehoboth Beach, and then I remembered it and came down, and I said, "Wow, what a great place!" And so we have had a couple of places here in Talbot County originally as weekend places, but then as we got more involved, it became a full-time residence. So,
Where did you grow up?
well, I grew up in Pennsylvania, small town in central Pennsylvania, and then moved to Washington when I joined IBM. IBM was the first real job that I had, and it formed a lot of the basis of what I do. I mean, IBM was a great training ground. They trained me on management, they trained me on leadership, and then technology. So that's where I learned technology, even though I'm a graduate electrical engineer. IBM had a great training ground, and I learned all about computers. And that was the time that the internet was coming on, so I learned all about the internet and software and things like that. So from a management and a leadership position, never on the real technical side. My father was always, "I paid for your electrical engineering degree." He said, "Why don't you do that?" I said, "I am, just at a management level." So it was very interesting to look at that technology and be in the forefront of the development of those technologies. Really enjoyed that. But what I found was IBM leadership sort of fell off the way, and IBM, instead of becoming the premier company that it always was, it dropped back to the second tier. So I left IBM and moved to a small startup called Tandem in Silicon Valley.
Oh.
And that was a blast. I mean, what's going on in Silicon Valley back then and today, it's just amazing. I haven't kept up with all of it, but I've kept up with a lot of it. And Tandem was very interesting because it started out, IBM was mainframes, Tandem was client server. It's a complete new technology, and that's the technology really that's formed the basis for cloud computing, and it was an outgrowth of the PC. So that technology, and with the leadership of Intel and Microsoft, really transformed what's we know as computing today. So I joined a company called AES in Washington, D.C. Most people don't know them, but they're listed on the New York Stock Exchange. And as they recruited me, I got very interested in consulting with utility companies in the late 90s as we expanded the energy field with deregulation that was passed by the U.S. Congress. So I was all over the country and Europe and Latin America, really buying companies and transforming those companies so that they were better companies than they were in the past. But I'm very interested in local government, what makes government tick, how it works, how it responds to citizen input, and what really we need to do as local government. Started out, I was mayor of Chevy Chase when I was just a young father, and that's where I cut my teeth on local government, and I learned so much in terms of leadership and management in the public sector as opposed to the private sector. And I carry that with me today. I mean, sometimes I wonder why, because public service takes a lot of time and effort, but I carry that forward to Talbot County. And I've served, as you probably know, Dave, I've served on boards here in the county, the solar board. I was just in yesterday talking to the Planning Commission because they're revisiting solar. So the solar project that we put together that looked at what the legislation should be for solar 5 years ago, things have changed so much in 5 years that now the county is looking at revisiting that. So we're putting together another work group to look at what solar should look like in Talbot County. That's going to be interesting work as we move forward. I formed as I moved from my Washington career to my Talbot County career, I formed a company called Solar Lane. And so we put solar facilities, we build solar facilities for private companies, but also public companies. And so I've built solar at Camp Pacomath, which is a Mexican a Methodist retreat up in Chestertown, and they have a very nice installation. I've consulted on solar with Eastern Utilities out at their sustainability campus. Nice installation. And most recently, I built the system out at Federalsburg. Both of those latter two are really bettering the environment because Federalsburg and Easton have very good wastewater treatment plants. The issue is, if you want to do wastewater treatment right, which they both do, it takes a lot of electricity. And the solar installation provides free electricity, free from the sun for them. And free in the sense that they both got grants from Maryland Department of Environment so that we would have the grant money to do that, and they didn't have to pay for it. So it's a win-win for everybody. The arrow of my interest in public service has continued ever since I started out as the mayor of Chevy Chase. And so when I came over to Talbot County, it was natural to get involved in those kind of things. And I saw some things and I was able to contribute, which is gratifying to me that I could serve the public in that way. But then also I look at some of the things that the county council is doing, and I just look and see that I could do a better job based on my experience and background and leadership and management abilities. So I said, I really should consider bringing that forward. As I talked to friends and advisors, they twisted my arm and said, you gotta run. So that was sort of the impetus. But then the other thing I have to do is talk to my family and make sure that they're supportive, because I never do anything unless they say, okay, this is what we want. Because as you point out, it's a time commitment, it's a commitment on thought process and taking time away from my family, which is something they have to agree to, because I don't want to force that on them. So that's really what led me to do it. But basically, the thrust is better government for Talbot County. That's really what I'm looking to do, and we can talk. Well, I've got basically 5 areas that I focus on. The first is jobs and the economy and education. I could pull those together because when I look at the job situation in Talbot County, I went down and talked to Dave Shaw as one person, and he tells me that in his plumbing business, he can't find the plumbers that he needs to hire to service his constituents. So he had to go to Buck Duncan over at the Midshore Community Foundation to get funding to get his people trained, and he had to send them to Mississippi for training. I think Talbot County needs to serve him better. And Eric Bridges tells me the same thing. When you look at his business, he can't find enough landscapers to service the clients that he needs. Solar Lane, I can't find the technical people that I need. So those are the examples that I look at. And so I propose to put together a job connecting focus in something that I call smart counties, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but also to pull together the various groups. Dorchester has extra classroom space, and so we could put a training system together pretty easily to get people trained in the jobs that we need. And those are good jobs. Dave tells me that a plumber can earn, a good plumber can earn $100,000, which would support a nice lifestyle here in Talbot County. So when people that are interested in that kind of working with their hands and dealing with those systems, we need to promote that and find pathways for those kind of jobs. Just one example. The community college is a great place to start. They have a trucking training program that they do. It needs to get integrated, in my view, to the public schools because, as I mentioned to you earlier, I do mentoring of kids at the public school down in St. Michael's. Wonderful kids. I have a fun time doing it, but they just need a little guidance and direction, which is why we call it in ACE, which stands for Architecture, Construction, and Engineering, started by Charlie Thornton. It really is mentoring, which helps kids understand what a job is in those 3 fields and how they would break into that. So as you mentor these kids, it just opens their eyes as to what's going on and what the opportunities are. And some of them choose to go into one of those 3 fields, and some of them say, that's really not for me. I want to go into automotive work, or I want to go into something else. So you begin to get some reality into those kids' minds as to what their career path can be and what they're interested in. Because my view is if you're not interested in what you're doing, you're going to hate what you're doing. So you've got to find what you like first. The second one I'd go into is transportation and public safety. Transportation from the sense that things are growing up in Talbot County, and I don't know about you, but I have a hard time getting across Route 50 at the morning and evening rush hour. That's only going to get worse. There's a large development down in Trapp, 2,500 homes. If you figure 2 cars per home, that's 5,000 cars that are going to be coming, not all of them through Easton, but a lot of them, some of them down to Cambridge. We've got to account for that. And then the state is planning on another bridge, as you know, quite controversial. Done all that planning up in Kent County, got an agreement up there. But that bridge is looking at bringing traffic on the weekends down Route 50 to Ocean City. That's going to create some more traffic backups. And so what do we do about that? The current county council hasn't focused on that as they should. They need to take a better focus on transportation and how we would work with the State Department of Transportation, and plan for this. Whether that bridge comes to fruition in the next 4 years for this county council term, hard to say, but we absolutely have to start planning for it right now. That leads to really planning and zoning. So planning and zoning is a real interest area of mine. Starting out in Montgomery County, when I was on the town council for Chevy Chase, we looked at how are we going to plan for the coming of Metro and how that was going to impact Bethesda. Maryland has a strong county, weak town form of government, so we had to deal with the Montgomery County for most of that planning in Bethesda. And I think it's pretty successful, because if you go to Bethesda today, the coalition that we put together to work with the county is what got great streetscape. So the restaurants, there are only 5 or so restaurants in Bethesda when we started out. Now there must be 250 restaurants. You can't even count them, but they're all great. People have all those choices, and you go out on a nice spring evening or summer evening, people are enjoying themselves in downtown Bethesda. And that was based on a lot of work, not just me, but the coalition that we put together all around Bethesda. So planning and zoning is key with me. I learned planning and zoning from Royce Hansen in Montgomery County. He was just a god in terms of what he knew about planning and zoning, and I learned some of that. So I would look to bring that type of planning to the transportation system. We are going to have to revisit the land use plan for Talbot County in this 4 years. So I would bring that experience as well.
Yeah.
And public safety, I put all these things together in one. As we expand and grow, we need to fund our sheriff and the public safety sector, because we need to have a community where everyone feels safe. So that's what I would do. My number 3 is access to healthcare. And access to healthcare is so important because the economy and jobs and the forward thrust of Talbot County depends on having a citizen group that is healthy. And right now, people don't have the access to healthcare universally across the county. That's because of transportation. It's because the clinics are not really spread out. So maybe we should have a health clinic down in Tillman Island so that people could get the health care they want. They should also have access to public transportation, so if they have to come to Easton, they can get public transportation easily. And in terms of a smart county, I would propose building an app on your phone where you could call up public transportation, or you can see transportation, because for someone standing out on a bus stop, they don't know if maybe the bus has been canceled that day or if it just left. they should have a way of knowing. So that's one of the initiatives is Smart County. The next initiative is climate and the environment. We're faced with climate change. I've studied climate change all of my career, and I look to provide that expertise as well. And in terms of the environment, I think we need to refocus on the Maryland Department of the Environment, because in my view, MDE has let us down. We have wastewater treatment plants here in Talbot County that are failing. There's the one up in Y Mills, there's the one down in Tillman, and we shouldn't have, as a county that's as wealthy as we are and forward thinking, we should not have that kind of a situation. But it's not driven by the county, it should be driven by the Maryland Department of the Environment. And if you look at some of the things that have gone on up there, they've just abdicated their responsibility, and they should not be allowing the sewage effluent to flow into the Crab Creek or the sewage effluent to flow from St. Michael's into the Miles River. That needs to be fixed, and so we need a comprehensive wastewater treatment plant. We've nibbled around the edge, and the engineers in Talbot County are wonderful people, but there needs to be more leadership and direction to get the right type of wastewater treatment. If you look at the town of Easton, we could follow their example. I don't know if you've ever looked at the sustainability campus that they have there, because what a great story. You can't get a better story than you pull the water from the aquifer, you deliver it to the people in Easton, you return it as wastewater to the sustainability campus, and you process that in a wastewater treatment facility, and oh, by the way, powered by solar. And then that produces an effluent in terms of water that's clean enough to put back on the land or clean enough to put back in the rivers. And the sludge that comes out can then be processed as fertilizer and sold, producing revenue for the farmers of Talbot County. So that's a complete environmental cycle. We need to emulate that. They have showed us the way. Yes. The last of the five that I'll talk about is broadband. I think that's so important, and my background, as I mentioned, has followed broadband all of my career. And broadband, in my view, we're talking right now about last mile broadband, taking the broadband from Eastern Utilities and Chop Tank to the homes. Very important, so that we get high-speed internet to the people, to the kids for their lessons, and to businesses so that they can come down here. But broadband is really just the highway. What you need to look at is what applications go on that, because highways are used for kids going to school, you go to the grocery store, you go to the doctor. Those applications need to be built onto broadband, and that's what I call Smart County. Using broadband access and the power of the computer and the power that's in our telephones right now to create apps that we can use in Talbot County. And there are numerous examples that I would draw on. I mean, Boulder, Colorado has been a leader in smart counties. Columbus, Ohio has been a leader in smart counties. There are many examples that we can pick up and use. And so that's the example of leadership that I would bring to the county. And that's why I focus on the main part of my campaign is smart counties, improving the county for the citizens, for the businesses, for the kids, using technology and using Smart County to do the kinds of things that we need to do. There's another example on broadband. I think we need to generate more strength in the economy by bringing a second fiber optic link down from the north. We only have one right now, and the reason we need that is that we could have data centers here in Talbot County and across the Eastern Shore, but we can't have them until there's something called diverse routing. And diverse routing means that if one fiber optic link happens to go out, you have another one to back up to. So Virginia has been sort of stealing Maryland's jobs because they have that. And I talked to leaders and politicians and legislatures in the state to say this is what we need to expand the economy. for the Eastern Shore. And so that's one of the things that would be a part of my program. I would focus on my background and skills, Dave, as you've asked me about and touched on in terms of leadership, management, the engineering and the science that I bring to this. That's my background and training. So I look at the skills that I've developed over a career, and I'm looking at this to be my capstone as to let's do something right for the county, because I'd like to give back and make the county better. So I'm not about OJT and learning on the job. I'm about bringing expertise and skills to the table for the county and for the citizens.
Thank you very
Building a better Talbot County.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Dave. I appreciate it.
Although I